Welcome back to Game & Muscle videos and the ultimate simulation of British weather. Yes, it's Project Cars 2. Now, following on from our previous video where we looked at the virtual reality support, and because almost 90% of the comments in the previous video were asking for it, in this video I'm going to be talking about the force feedback and the general handling in Project Cars 2. Now, before I get going into that though, we've got to be careful we don't upset the Pac-Man. Some people have upset the Pac-Man and they've never been seen again. Gobble gobble, gone for good. And then it's also really important to bear in mind that the game is not out yet, and the version I'm playing is a press version, which isn't even a beta version of the game. So who knows, what I say here might be largely redundant in a month's time. Firstly though, I made some incorrect statements in the previous video, namely when I was talking about the virtual reality in-game mirrors. They do indeed move with your face. When you move your head, the mirrors move, like they do in iRacing and like they do in Live for Speed, though they're not 3D stereo mirrors, they're two-dimensional. But to be honest, for me, I don't notice that aspect of it. I like how they are in iRacing, and I like how they are here. Now, the reason I think I missed the fact that they move is because they don't seem to reflect the driver or the immediacy of the car, so it's not as obvious. Obviously, the way parallax works in distances, if you move your head left and right but it's reflecting something really far away, it's not going to move that much, whereas if you've got your face reflecting in it, like a beauty queen doing the makeup, of course, when you turn to the left to put your blusher on, you notice it straight away. Now, the actual handling in the game, I think is actually really nice. As it is now, there's certainly some vehicles that are better than other vehicles, and cars that personally I find a lot more enjoyable. This vehicle that I'm actually showing in the video right now, the Formula C, is actually a really fun car to drive in the simulator. Also the Caterham, and there's a couple of other cars that they just click and they make sense. What's really noticeable is, crucially, Project Cars 2, you can actually balance the cars on and slightly over the limit. They've got that pliability to them. The back end is pretty stable. There's mostly race cars in the game. It doesn't actually have that many road cars in the game. So most of the cars aren't set up for out-and-out drifting, though obviously there's some drift vehicles in the game, and also the Rallycross cars in the game. But what you notice is, with the race cars, if you get the back end out in a bit of a slide because you've been driving a little bit naughty, maybe you just don't know what you're doing, you put the brake on too hard, you can actually catch it, control it, and you can, crucially, play with the cars to some extent, even race cars that aren't set up for drifting through the corners. And this is obviously important because, as you can see on the screen, it's starting to rain. Welcome to the United Kingdom! Basically, the start of the video was a lie. If it's sunny in the UK, it's actually because the government has activated the fake sun sign projector that stops everyone killing themselves and allows the economy to kind of trundle on. But yeah, having the actual plight of the physics is really important when you've got dynamic weather and the dynamic track in Project Cars 2, which is actually, I think it is the standout feature. I was somewhat skeptical before, having only read about Project Cars 2, in terms of having a dynamic track and how much it would affect the race and how much of it's a gimmick versus how much of it is actually something that makes for a more enjoyable driving experience. But having done multiple races now with it going from sun to rain absurdly quickly because I've accelerated the time, it is genuinely really fun and completely different to what I've experienced in other driving simulators. Bar maybe R-Factor 2 had dynamic weather, but it was a little bit funky at times. And Project Cars 1 had it, but the handling wasn't up to scratch. I think the basic tire model in Project Cars 1, or just the nature of how the cars lost grip and how you could play with that grip, just wasn't up to the same level as it is in Project Cars 2 for the dynamic weather to actually be fun. It was more just a nuisance. So I think the main thing that's really apparent in Project Cars 2 is that there's definitely a feeling of ply and a sort of the tyre actually trying to grip the road, but then also a sort of shuffle movement that you get from the general road tyre interaction. Now, because I've been too positive, as always, I have to throw in some negatives. You can't be happy all the time, that would just be weird. What I would say is, with the default setups, which is all I've been driving because I haven't fiddled with setups yet and looked at that side of the game, the cars do seem generally a little bit understeery. I mean, obviously with the drift cars you can smack the back out and start sliding them around, but the race cars and the cars set up for actual racing, do tend to be on the understeery side, and it can be a little bit ambiguous as to how to get the front end to bite and turn in. The cars don't seem quite as willing to get the fronts to hook up in some occasions. I think rather frustratingly, and what's going to annoy sim racers, is that this is another simulator with another approach. Unlike Project Cars 1, and unlike the Codemasters Formula games, for example, and Forza, this is actually on the realistic side of things, and it definitely feels way more dynamic than those titles. It also feels different from, say, R-Factor 2, Live for Speed, iRacing and Assetto Corsa. Not necessarily in a bad way. Again, it's just its own way of doing it. In my opinion, I definitely prefer how Assetto Corsa and R-Factor 2, for example, feel tighter in many situations and a little bit more nimble, but at the same time, you don't have the sheer range of the actual content, the scenarios that you can drive in those simulators, so you kind of have to balance it with that and what you actually want to get out of the given game that you're playing. Crucially though, with the cars that I enjoy in this at the moment, they're not frustrating, and there's not stuff in there that makes me just want to smash my head against the table, which is always a good sign given how anal I am when it comes to driving simulators. Now, when it comes to the force feedback, I haven't said that much because they are still doing some dialing and tweaking with the force feedback settings and how it operates in the game. Also, I'm using a direct drive wheel, and I haven't actually tested it with a consumer wheel yet, which I will need to do to see what it's actually like on the equipment that most people are going to be playing the game with. At its core though, and really nicely, is that the force feedback actually gives you really good information to what the tyres are doing. So for example, the amount of general grip you've got is conveyed through the force feedback, which is something that's often lacking from many driving games and even driving simulators. With how I've set it up at the moment, I think understeer could probably be a little bit more clear or a little bit more communicative as to a sort of analog sense of how much grip you've got going in. But, it's in development, and I'm still in the process of fiddling and tweaking with stuff, so I can't really say, anything definitive in that regard. So in final summary, what I would say, if you're a hardcore super anal sim racer, that's a film you can pick up from the top shelf. I'd be cautiously optimistic. If you're a potato peasant, then I think you'll be really excited about this. And if you're a normal person with a balanced life that probably doesn't play that many games, what are you doing on the channel? Go away! This isn't the place for you. So I hope that was useful, guys. Don't forget to subscribe. I've talked to SMS and they've said those of you that do subscribe to Game & Muscle videos will get a 30% horsepower boost with every vehicle in the game. Incredible. Also, likey, dislikey, drop us any comments or questions you've got. Until the next video, I'm going to have a cup of tea. See you guys. Goodbye.